Greetings everyone, welcome to my Sonic issue 278 review. Previously we were introduced to the new version of Lupe because she just so happens to have temple keys. People have pointed out in the comments that both Tao and the egg machine in the flashback are callbacks to the Doomsday Pod, which appeared in the episode Cry of the Wolf along with Lupe. Yeah, I can see it. I have myself to blame for missing this reference since I didn't see Cry of the Wolf all the way before working on the last review. And that's why I love you guys. You keep bringing things up I tend to miss. Keep it up. Anyway, the end of the first story was setting up the second, with Sally and Bunnie looking for the final Chaos Emerald in an occupied temple. The egg boss Clove wanted to investigate a breach in security and insisted that her sister Cassia stayed behind. While Clove stalked Sally, Cassia went out anyway and found Bunnie. The conflict between these two would bring them to the final emerald. But first, let's see what Sonic's up to this issue. Sonic, along with some of his friends, are fighting local egg forces in the arid sand zone. You know, I'm starting to see a trend with these last few issues. Anyway, our group's having trouble with either badniks or egg soldiers that look like they purchased their attire from Avatar's Sandbenders. Help arrives in the form of this trio, who call themselves the Freedom Fighters. Thanks to them, the enemy's in retreat. Sonic thanks the team and calls them imitators, which the orange guy takes offense to, until Sonic introduces himself. Turns out this Freedom Fighter team was inspired by Sonic's and were properly introduced to its members: Spike the Porcupine, Sonar the Fennec, and Trevor Burrows the Mole. Naturally, they joined Sonic's team in searching for the Key Guardian in this area, Shamar. And so far, nobody seems to have seen or heard of this person they're looking for, Ishan. Wait a second, it's that purple fish lady again! Yeah, remember her from part 4 of the tournament arc? Anyway, the group reconverges and Sonar has information on Ishan's whereabouts. Turns out the Egg Army kidnapped him so he could restore an old temple for them. Yeah, it's another rescue mission. That night, they scope out the occupied temple, and of course, Spike's team is surprised about Sonic's Werehog transformation. They decide to split off into 3 groups to cover more ground. The first group consists of Big, Chip, and Sonar. And when Sonar asks Big to scout ahead, there's a Dark Gaia monster ready to ambush him. The second group consists of Antoine, Spike, and Trevor. This group decides to split up further, with Spike and Trevor going in one direction and Antoine in another. It just so happens that Antoine encounters some badniks. Finally, the third team consists of Sonic the Werehog and no one else. He too gets caught and is surrounded by soldiers and badniks. And we end part 1 of this story with the egg boss Nephthys threatening to end him. Now we enter part 2 of Hidden Cost, with Bunnie and Cassia fighting for the emerald. Bunnie asks a pretty legitimate question. Why would anyone in the Egg Army want cybernetics from Eggman? Cassia calls Bunnie out on her hypocrisy, stating what's wrong with self-improvement. Well, needless to say, Bunnie didn't ask for her self-improvement. The two soon have a new problem. Their fight caused the floor beneath them to break up and both fall into the collapsing structure. Meanwhile, Clove just walks up to Sally and introduces herself. Nice touch for Nicole to text Sally about the Chaos Emerald. Anyway, Clove lays it out that if Sally's team were to take the temple, Eggman would then force Clove's forces to take it back, leading to endless fighting. Bottom line, Clove wants Sally to back off. Sally, still keeping the fake temple information to herself, plays along, saying that the world is at stake. Clove goes on saying that she saw the Crystal Cave footage and perceives Sally as a smart person who'd take a third option if possible. Clove? Let me loan you copies of Sonic 266 and 267, and then judge Sally. Anyway, Clove took a chance to meet Sally and was prepared to face the consequences if there were other Freedom Fighters ready to ambush her. But there aren't. Based on the lack of Freedom Fighters and Sally being very reasonable, Clove correctly deduces that this temple is a fake. But then Clove's like, maybe I don't know any better, and starts leaving. Sally offers to help her, but Clove says that by not fighting her forces, she is helping. Oh boy. We rejoin Bunnie and Cassia in the cave-in with Cassia injuring her leg. Bunnie remarks that she should selfishly ask Eggman for a new leg. This leads to some revelations about Cassia before she became a cyborg, that she was a sick girl who was losing or lost her hearing and sight. Bunnie regrets her remark and reveals that there were times she wished she was fully flesh and blood again. One thing is certain, they need to get out. While Bunnie won't surrender the emerald, she does offer to help Cassia walk out and forces her to cooperate when she brings up her sister. Cassia tells her about the various tunnels underneath and they could follow them to find a way out. As they travel, there's a bit of small talk, mainly involving Cassia asking Bunnie about her recovery process, which boils down to physical therapy and the support of her friends. Eventually, they reach the room containing storage crates. As they are about to part ways, a couple of egg soldiers arrive to take Bunnie prisoner. The first story is once again a paint-by-numbers ordeal. Go to a new location to get the keys, and once again, rescuing the person who has the keys. So let's spend this time talking about the new stuff. The freedom fighters of this area, Spike, Sonar, and Trevor, are obviously supposed to be knockoffs of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. Even the editor admits to that here. There are obviously differences, such as Trevor using his underground digging techniques to attack enemies. Plus, he's blind. Spike attacks enemies by spinning into them, but not in a spin-dash manner. And Sonar? Well, Fennecs are a type of fox usually found in North Africa. I do like the idea of teams forming to fight Eggman because of Sonic and his friends, and it's the first time we see this in the new universe. Though near the end, I have to raise an eyebrow when members of Sonic's team are left alone by Spike's team, only to run into some kind of trouble. I'll wait until next issue before I pass judgment on this team. I do like this little rapport between Big and Antoine. How Antoine's explaining things in a dramatic manner, only for Big to just simplify them. Very fitting with their characters. Nephthys looks cool and threatening, but will she act threatening next issue? Yes, I heard it's a she. Shamar is a Sonic Unleashed location, and the corresponding level Arid Sands briefly appears. The person the team needs to find, Ishan or Eshan, is a character from the game. From what I can tell, they're combining his character traits from both versions of Unleashed. The restoration of temples from the 360 PS3 version, and the Temple Guardian from the PS2 Wii version. I'm giving this story a 7. While things are starting to get repetitive, I do like the game nods, plus this story is a two-parter. And the art's also alright. If this 10-page format is going to stick around for a bit, the stories need to be better structured. Like the second story, for example. It continues the comparing and contrasting of the two sides from last time. We'll start with Sally and Clove. Both are intelligent and try to play mind games with each other. But ultimately, Clove is a neutral party and doesn't want her people hurt. Even though she's figured out that this is a fake temple, she won't tell anyone. Now, does Clove know there's an emerald lying around? Maybe, or maybe not. All we can do is speculate. Now for Bunnie and Cassia. This was more than a physical fight, but an emotionally verbal one. Cassia struck first by saying to Bunnie what's wrong with self-improvement. Well, as Bunnie said, she never wanted self-improvement. She was a victim of Eggman's attack on Mobiletropolis, and if not for Professor Chuck's roboticizer, she would have died. Bunnie verbally fought back when Cassia injured her leg, with the suggestion that she should selfishly get a robotic one. Then we learn a little bit about Cassia. We never go into detail how sick she was, or whether or not it was a disease or something. It was more than likely bad enough that it might have made her blind and deaf. Thus, the cybernetics, despite them coming from a psychopathic man-child, were probably a godsend to her. This would also explain why Cassia was eager to do things despite her sister's fear. Her situation was probably so bad, she could have been bedridden for a long time. As the two journey in the tunnels, there's talk about the recovery process. Once again, for Bunnie, it's physical therapy and emotional support that got her through the transition. Cassia mentioned special treatments, which were also mentioned last issue. For Cassia, This could mean her cybernetics might not be as compatible. It's kind of like getting an organ transplant and taking special meds to prevent the body from rejecting the new organs. Honestly, I'm curious to see Clove and Cassia's life before Eggman came along. This gets an 8.5. A much better story that continues exploring characters and makes you care for them. Though I do admit, if the third and final part doesn't end with Sally and Bunnie getting the Chaos Emerald, I'll be disappointed. So join me next month as we get to see the conclusions to these two stories. Until then, have a good day and be safe. Say hello to our new troll face meme.